holes that the riders could fall into.
If in doubt, get the brushes out. We've just had the Winter Olympics. We might have some candidates for the Great Britain curling team here, or an Indonesian curling team indeed, in the future. We've got the brooms, we've got the brushes, we've got the road sweepers doing everything we can then to get the race underway in, what is it now, 15:54 local time, so in just over 20 minutes time we should be good to go, all being well here at the Pertamina Mandalik circuit. As Loris Capirossi and Franco Mancini and other Dorna representatives make sure that every aspect, every potential problem corner with standing water is cleared before the riders do head out on the circuit.
So who will see this as a big opportunity then, a wet race in MotoGP? The likes of Pol Espargaro perhaps starting down in 15th on the grid for Repsol Honda. Of course, he took his first MotoGP podium.
I'm standing out here with no jacket, no umbrella, and it's almost nothing coming down now, so I think we're in luck.
Great news, Simon. Thank you very much indeed for that. Pit lane opens then in just over 4 minutes' time, and you can also see, just to underline Simon's point, a number of the spectators in the exposed seats at the front of the grandstands have removed their rain jackets and their Macs that were keeping them dry in the torrential conditions that we had for the last couple of hours. So, all being well, we'll be off and underway with the first Indonesian Grand Prix in the Premier class for 25 years. The race due to get underway in just under 20 minutes' time. Fabio Quartararo will line up from pole position then. Let's just run you quickly through the grid that will be lining up shortly. Martin and Zarco for Pramac. There is Jorge Martin, second on the grid. Starts from the middle of the front row. Brad Binder heads row 2 ahead of Bastianini, the World Championship leader, and Pecco Bagnaia. Oliveira, Rins and Miller there on row 3 ahead of Aleix Espargaro, Fabio Di Gianantonio, the top rookie, and Luca Marini. Marco Bezzecchi starts 13th ahead of Franco Morbidelli, who did receive a 3-place grid penalty for an infraction during the practice start session at the end of FP3 yesterday. That dropped into 15th. He's now been promoted back up to 14th because Marc Marquez, unfortunately, who a number of those fans came to see, will not be starting this Indonesian Grand Prix due to a concussion sustained in a violent high side during the warm-up session this morning. That promotes his teammate Pol Espargaro up onto the 5th row in 15th with Andrea Dovizioso, who's certainly got some previous in wet conditions, hasn't he? He lines up 16th ahead of Joan Mir and Alex Marquez. Maverick Vinales would be 19th on the grid ahead of the 2 Tech 3 rookies of Raul Fernandez and Remy Gardner. Darren Binder is set to start 22nd with Takaki Nakagami in 23rd. They're all, of course, chasing Fabio Quartararo, who starts from pole position.
Yeah, just actually quickly popped out of our commentary box and saw on the back of a scooter going to the Repsol Honda office was Marc Marquez. Quite a big plaster, it looks like he got on the right elbow. If that's all he got away with after that monster high side at turn 7 in this morning's warm-up, he's a very, very lucky boy. Of course, the 8-times world champion, sadly not a participant in this shortened 20-lap Indonesian Grand Prix. After that big spill this morning in the warm-up session, we wish Mark well and hope he's back in action, fighting fit and ready to go when we make our first trip to South America since 2019. The Termas de Rio Hondo circuit primed and ready for action there in 2 weeks' time.
So 90 seconds then until the bikes will head out onto the racetrack, and of course the riders wouldn't ordinarily push too hard on a sighting lap, but you can imagine the riders will be very, very keen when they head out there to get a real idea of what the grip levels are like. Of course, they'll do 1 lap to the grid, and then within 15 minutes of the pit lane opening, we will be off and running with the warm-up lap in this 20-lap Indonesian Grand Prix. Joan Mir, boy, has he got some work to do, starting 17th on the grid, although he hasn't felt happy or comfortable at any stage really in the dry conditions this weekend. So perhaps a wet Grand Prix might present him with an opportunity to paper over some of the cracks of what has been a really desperate weekend for the 2020 world champion.
You know, although he's been in MotoGP a couple of years, hasn't he, Joan Mir? Likewise, Fabio Quartararo, they don't have an awful lot of wet weather experience. This is a journey into the unknown as well for the rookies, the likes of Marco Bezzecchi, Fabio Di Gianantonio, Remy Gardner, Darren Binder as well. They'd have never raced a MotoGP bike in rain conditions. So Fabio Quartararo, for the first time in 9 long months, can't believe we're saying that. He was always the qualifying king of MotoGP, wasn't he, the Frenchman? But he is going to start from pole position in this 20-lap Grand Prix. The number 20 flags waving proud in the Mandalik grandstands.
Just listen to the roar. This is what the crowd have been waiting for a good couple of hours now, since the Moto2 race came to a conclusion with spots of rain in the air. They've seen plenty of rainfall since then. The green flag waves, and Johan Zarco leads the field out for this sighting lap. They'll do one lap to the grid, and then at 15 minutes past the hour, the Indonesian Grand Prix will be underway. World champion Fabio Quartararo starts from pole position. Just how much has his wet weather riding come on since last season? Of course, it was his difficulties in the wet conditions and mixed conditions that saw him start the Grand Prix that eventually concluded with him as world champion back at the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix last year from 15th on the grid. Can he put those problems behind him and give his world championship defence the kickstart that it needs?
This is a massive step into the unknown for these MotoGP riders. They've done barely a handful of wet weather laps. Certainly the track wasn't as wet as this on Saturday morning. So this really is stepping into the unknown territory. Who's going to quickly master the conditions? Who's going to take the big risks? Jack Miller, well, you know that he's so good in the wet conditions. He's proven to be strong on the Ducati and the Honda in the past. Of course, it was mixed conditions, and he took that famous win at the Dutch TT in Assen back in 2016. Who else has got really strong wet weather prowess in this field? Frankie Morbidelli's actually not a bad wet weather rider. Other guys with nothing to lose really. Andrea Dovizioso in particular on a factory Ducati, where you can always put your money on him to be a big threat in these rain conditions. You've got to say, the way that Fabio Quartararo is throwing that Yamaha around that second sector, there's been a lot of feedback from the World Superbike riders here and the Moto3 riders who had a couple of wet sessions that the grip levels here in the rain at this Mandalik circuit are very good. Very good indeed. So you can see the guys are just out there now trying to understand where the patches of water are, where the water's perhaps at its worst, and then also just work out the grip levels. Pecco Bagnaia also relatively inexperienced in terms of wet weather riding in MotoGP as well.
Alex Rins is a rider I'd perhaps point to as well, who might have half a chance in these conditions. He starts in the middle of the third row in 8th place. Pit lane closes in 4 minutes time, which is why you're seeing riders come back down pit lane. They do have time to do this. This isn't like the quick restart procedure where you have 60 seconds to get out there before the pit lane closes again. So understandably, some of the smart cookies on this grid, the 2 Pramac riders, the 2 Suzuki riders, taking the opportunity to do an extra lap of the track before they pull up on the grid, just to get a little bit more information, just to see where some of the damper patches are, where some of the grip levels are. KTM, of course, they'll fancy their chances this afternoon. Brad Binder, last time we saw conditions like this, was winning a race on slicks. Of course, he won't be running them today. Miguel Oliveira also looking good. He starts 7th on the grid. Their team boss Francesco Guidotti is speaking now with Simon.
Francesco, we now step into the unknown. I'd love to know how your riders go into this race, how they've been feeling in the box, and we do know how in the unknown Brad often pulls out something special. What are your thoughts?
Difficult to have an opinion, difficult to predict something. We never raced here before, and the conditions are completely different than the test and the practice for the weekend. So yeah, let's start and we'll see. But the guys are in a good mood. Both of them usually perform well in the wet conditions. So yeah, finger crossed and let's go.
Best of luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to Francesco Guidotti. Great start, as Lewis said, for the KTM team in Doha. Brad Binder, his 3rd podium finish in the Premier class. I wonder if he's going to be tempted to go out on slick tyres. Joking, of course. That was, of course, his brilliant victory at the Red Bull Ring in the Austrian Grand Prix last year. So finally, we are getting the grid forming here at the Pertamina Mandalika circuit in Indonesia. Pramac Ducati await their man, Jorge Martin and Johan Zarco, both going from the front row of the grid. Brad Binder, there's going to be some nerve jangling now, because as we mentioned, we can't overemphasise, this is a complete blank canvas, a complete journey into the unknown for these guys. They've never raced before here in Mandalik. They've certainly got very little experience of wet weather conditions. In some respects it might be a bit of a lottery, but it's certainly going to provide some nail-biting entertainment. We hope you have stuck with us over the last hour and a half or so when our coverage for MotoGP started. I'm sure you have. Why would you go anywhere? It's the greatest motorsport show on earth as we look at Enea Bastianini starting from the middle of that second row. Binder and Bastianini, Lewis, in the dry, you really fancy them to be strong given they've excelled in the Doha from really good qualifying performances. Let's quickly pop down to the grid again. Piero Taramasso and Michelin, they've been thrown an 11th hour curveball, haven't they, by these tricky conditions? Simon's with the Michelin Motorsport manager, Piero Taramasso.
Yes, Piero, some new conditions for you to make the weekend even tougher. Can you tell us what tyres the riders will go for?
Yeah, in this condition the choice is medium front and medium rear. This is the one because the track temperature is still quite high, is around 25, 26 degrees. And also because here the tricky point is the overheating on the right side. With the soft compound, the problem that you might overheat too much, you lose grip. With the medium will be much more stable. So this is the best choice for this condition.
Thank you, Piero.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks to Piero Taramasso. We're just running through this revised grid now, of course, revised sadly because 8 times world champion Marc Marquez has been ruled out of this delayed Indonesian Grand Prix. There is the president then, Mr. Joko Widodo, who is finally, after all of his effort and all the effort of the authorities here in Indonesia, it looks like, thankfully, we are going to get MotoGP action here in Indonesia for the first time since 1997.
Well, the Shaman certainly did the trick in the end. We got the race we were hoping for.
Yeah, whatever that lady's name was, get her inducted into the MotoGP Hall of Fame very, very quickly because, yes, it does look like the Rain Banisher, or whatever she was called by the locals. She normally goes to big events like weddings and parties.
She'll be getting a position at the FIM, I think. She'll be taken to every Grand Prix over the course of the year now to try and ward off any potential wet races or cancellations. So we're about to get underway then for this Indonesian Grand Prix, and Enea Bastianini goes into it as the championship leader. Let's get a word from Grassini with Simon.
Yeah, that was a key word you said there, championship leader. That's why I've come to see Michele Massini. Michele, he's done so well, Enea, you know, for the first race, all the way through this event, put himself in a good position on the grid, looked good in FP4. Now, completely different conditions. How does he feel about the wet?
Yeah, now it's difficult to predict how does it go the race because still a lot of water on track. There is a big patch in some corner, but for sure this is the same condition for everybody, and we don't make any practice on this condition. So we will see. We start from the second row. This is good enough, but we have to learn lap by lap what we can do.
How does Enea feel about rain condition riding?
Not so bad. Not so bad. We have to improve in this point, but we have a good base on the rain.
Thank you and best of luck.
Thank you to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks Simon. Thanks to Michele Massini from the Grassini Ducati team. Can they continue their stellar start to 2022? Alex Rins, not quite sure that it's sunglasses weather right now for the Suzuki man, but I guess just trying to keep himself focused, trying to hide some of the nerves that will inevitably be hitting these riders. This is nerve-wracking stuff. This is tense. This is where these guys are really, their skills are put to the limit, their concentration, their focus, because they're just about to encounter a racetrack in conditions that they've never experienced before. It's a bit of a level playing field, this, isn't it? It's going to be a case of fortune favouring the brave. Jack Miller, normally he revels in these kind of conditions. Even Thriller Miller looks a little bit pensive as we count down towards race time here in Mandalika.
Yes, just 6 minutes to go then. Speaking, of course, earlier on, we were discussing the potential strategies that might be deployed in a dry weather race, and the big talking point, I suppose, was Fabio Quartararo's determination, I think, to get to the front of the race and get a clear track, with the Ducatis looking to stop him doing so. In many ways, even though it's a wet race, that is still the aim for Fabio Quartararo. More because of the visibility here rather than any kind of issues with overheating front tyres. We're still expecting to see a little bit of spray, more than a little bit of spray. There will still be some standing water in patches of this racetrack. We've already heard from Piero Taramasso that there are still some patches as the virtual fan wall. Get ready to see this historic first Indonesian Grand Prix in 25 years. If we are going to see some spray, particularly in the early laps with the field all running together, it's going to be so important for these guys to try and get a clear track as soon as possible. Yeah,
Fabio Quartararo would not have known how perhaps significant that pole position was yesterday. He knew it was going to be good and crucial in dry conditions. Well, it might be absolutely vital now with, as Lewis said, the potential for spray hitting the riders that are in the chasing pack. An excellent weekend so far then for this young man, Fabio Di Gianantonio. Very, very limited experience of that Ducati in rain conditions. This is going to be a tough test of the mettle for these MotoGP riders. 5 minutes then to the race start here in Mandalik, and finally we can say there's going to be MotoGP race action in Indonesia. Our first visit to Southeast Asia since 2019.
One rider perhaps to identify that we haven't mentioned yet, who will certainly fancy his chances in these conditions. Starts all the way back in 18th on the grid. The brother of this man, Marc Marquez, if you're just joining us, will not start this Grand Prix due to a concussion sustained in the warm-up earlier on today, as some drizzle starts to fall, as Simon Crafar lets us know from pit lane. But Alex Marquez, his brother, of course, took a sensational podium, his first podium in MotoGP in very wet conditions at Le Mans, and very nearly won that Grand Prix as he was chasing down Danilo Petrucci. He'll certainly be a rider who will have a big result on his hands potentially today. Certainly a bigger result than he thought when he qualified 18th yesterday.
Let's just hope then that that rain that's just starting to fall a little bit heavier again, as the team personnel are told to clear the grid, that it doesn't start falling as ferocious as what it did about an hour ago, which caused this lengthy delay here for the MotoGP return to Indonesia for the first time since 1997. Understandably, some really tense, anxious-looking faces down there on the grid. Somebody give Aleix Espargaro a glass of water. He looked like he got a real dry mouth. So here it is then, finally, we're about to get underway in MotoGP here in Indonesia. Two Pramac Ducatis on the front row of the grid. Johan Zarco in third place. Jorge Martin starts from second place. But it's the reigning world champion Fabio Quartararo who starts from pole position in our first Indonesian Grand Prix in 25 long years. Don't go anywhere, folks. 20 laps of pure drama and theatre coming your way in MotoGP. Up next.
Who will be the rainmaster of Mandalik here in MotoGP? Fabio Quartararo, the reigning world champion, starts from pole position ahead of the Pramac Ducatis of Jorge Martin and Johan Zarco. Brad Binder heads the KTM Challenge from the front of the second row ahead of the